hope you enjoyed your morning tea. And I should thank the Department of Internal Affairs who've sponsored our morning tea and our lunch today. I'd quite like to have my lunch and morning tea sponsored every day, but I guess life doesn't really go like that. Well, after a star turn yesterday on stage, you'll all know Colin Lynch. He's been the Deputy Government Statistician with a focus on customer strategy and delivery since July of last year. He's part of that revolution we are hearing about in the department, being led, of course, by Liz. Expertise Colin has in macroeconomic and environmental statistics. He was the Deputy Secretary in the State Sector Performance Group and was Manager of the Health Sector at Treasury. He also led, and this is interesting, I think, the Central North Island Forestry Waikato River Treaty negotiations, probably on the other side of the table from Riri Alice, who was here earlier, but I cannot see her now. Anyhow, please welcome back Deputy Government Statistician Colin Lynch.
I'll continue the theme of Celtic migrants, Celtic Collins, with being here 20 years, have 3 children. Mine haven't learned to mimic me just yet, so I'll make the most of that. So, look, what I thought I'd start off with is just very briefly explain what my role is. Customer service and delivery sounds very grand, but it's a new role, and at the heart is looking at what we provide our customers. So what I'm actually responsible for on a day-to-day basis is just about all the outputs, as we call them, that come out of the organisation, from population statistics to GDP to access to our microdata infrastructure. And my new role is about looking across those products, and we do produce a lot of them. And I think in the last month we produced 30 sets of data. Here's a classic household labour force survey, all 50-odd pages of it. We don't publish it, we only publish a handful now. Most of it's all web-based. But my role is to take those outputs and those services and reorient them to best meet your needs as customers and to understand customers. So it's a start of a journey. I think we always have been customer-focused, but it's about really sharpening that. I have taken the chance to talk to you, and we've heard lots of feedback already, and really keen to continue to hear that feedback through the rest of the day. So what I'd like to do is talk to you about, in a little more practical way, some of the issues we're encountering and approaching with our admin data strategy. Admin data is not new, as the sort of picture behind me reflects. Admin data has been with us since we started, I guess whoever started counting things, it was always admin data, and there's a classic example from the 1893 yearbook behind me, which is Kerrigum, and I guess where we are now is what's referred to in the statistics community as the big data elephant. Everyone knows it's there, but we're not really sure what to do with it. So when one of our long-serving staff retired after 40 years of service, Paul Maxwell, last year, at his leaving do, he described himself as sort of part of the survey generation. When he started in statistics, sample surveys were just beginning to use them a lot. There were still lots of questions about whether sample surveys were the right thing and shouldn't we stick with admin data and censuses, to, as he described it, back to the future, where admin data comes back to the core of our business and the core of the official statistics business. We are now seeking to push the boundaries of admin data and shift Statistics New Zealand and the official statistics system from a situation where admin data is traditionally used as a complement to surveys to one where admin data is our first choice, and we use surveys and other methods to complement admin data. Our ambition is to make a transformational change, or revolution is the word that was used yesterday, and develop new measures and practices using admin data. While the challenges of doing this are very real, the benefits are huge, not alone in terms of new information and new products, but also, very importantly, in reducing the time and load we put on our respondents and the impost that we traditionally do create when we collect surveys and collect data. So what I'd like you to get from today is just an understanding of where we are and where as an organisation, and where our admin data strategy is at. Admin data is, we all throw the term around, but I thought I'd just provide some clarity about what I mean by it. It's all the data that's collected by government and private sector agencies that's they collect in doing their business, and fundamentally it's not collected for statistical purposes. Rather, it's collected to capture service delivery, registrations, events, activities, legal records. And so it does fundamentally differ in nature, scope and quality, and that is the great challenge, is how do we take that data and make the most of it for official statistics and, more importantly, information to help people make decisions. So let me just look. There we go with the old school way. So admin data, as I said, has been around a long time. If you look in, I was lucky to, actually, we do have a copy of the 1893 yearbook. I guess at the time it was the Internet of all things in New Zealand. I think just about every bit of data in New Zealand is in this at the time. And it has lots and lots of interesting admin data, from the number of carcasses exported, the fact that there was 800 tonnes of bone dust produced in Auckland in 1891. But perhaps some of the more interesting stats in it are 25% of prisoners in New Zealand in 1891 were Irish-born. Well, New Zealand-born were only accounted for 12%, and I'm sure Colin MacDonald will be here. Scottish-born only accounted for 12%. I'd like to assure you that more recent Irish immigrants are much better behaved. I'm sure Donald will agree with me. But the recent decades, particularly the last 10 years, the rapid change in digitisation and information technology has created this, I don't know, there's no what word, the sea, tsunami, pick your word, of data. And our organisation's use of administrative data has accelerated in the last decade, particularly initially to replace surveying for small businesses. And we very much recognise we're only beginning to scratch the surface of that. But the pace of growth of admin data is very hard to get your head around. Liz quoted the sort of commonly used statistic, 40 zettabytes of data in the world. And, you know, being in a numerate organisation, I asked a couple of my young analysts to try and make that practical. I mean, they love a challenge like that. It's lovely working in an organisation that's packed with numerate people. So they said, well, I said, you know, try and make it practical. So they started off with the disk I brought, or the USB, 4 gigabit USB. I brought the speech on and said, how many of those will be? And I said, oh, well, 4 zettabytes is 10 trillion of those, so that doesn't quite give you an attempt. And I said, well, try again. So they came back with swimming pools. How many of these could you put in a swimming pool? And they told me that you could put 130 million flash drives in an Olympic swimming pool. I said, well, so how many swimming pools would we need? Well, we'd need 80,000 Olympic swimming pools of flash drives to hold 40 zettabytes of data. And I said, but they said, no, we've got a better one. If you lay them end to end, you could go to the sun and back 2.5 times. So it's just, you know, it is mind-boggling, just the amount of data, and I don't think there's just that many zeros. We can't get our heads around it. But look, the impact of the change in the availability of private and public sector admin data is and how fast that is happening is perhaps reflected by the speakers at this morning's session and this afternoon's session. They're talking about topics that were simply not discussed, or there was very limited discussion about at the last user forum in 2010. Discussions about data and information as an asset, the core role it plays in public sector, the data users forum, and that's just been kicked off today, visualization and privacy, all topics that were, you know, people were aware of but weren't at the core of our business, and 4 years later very much dominating the discussion today and dominating much of the conference. So let me get to the strategy. Like all good strategies, we've got a nice simple visual. One of the wonderful things about new computer technologies, we can use visuals, and we're all visual people. So I want to talk about a couple of elements of this, and I particularly want to talk about external engagement or customer, and talk about how admin data influences what we do with customers, and also talk a little bit about the statistical. Of course, the great potential provided by admin data is not to continue to do what we've always done better and more efficiently, but it is to create the new products and new opportunities that admin data provides us. And to fundamentally do that, this will require us, as you'll hear us time and time again say, is better understand what the needs are out there and how they can be met. So that requires a much closer working with and partnership with our customers. And also, I think we have a role in bringing customers across the system and producers together. And I use the word customers quite purposefully, because the more traditional user word suggests a relatively passive act in which we produce something and someone uses it. Clearly, customer involves a relationship and a joint production. We've done quite a bit of in-depth work more recently into our customers, and we are well aware of who they are. But what we're trying to figure out is, are we delivering what they need? And I think that's more of a challenge, because certainly what we've always delivered reflects a world where we presumed people wanted 50-odd pages of printed text, and clearly they want more. So I just want to take you through a couple of examples of where working with customers has made a difference, and how that difference has been made. Try again. So let me start with the Christchurch Retail Indicator. So post the earthquakes, plural, lots of questions from officials in Wellington, but more importantly from Sarah and from other people, trying to understand what was happening to the Christchurch economy, and particularly what was happening to the retail sector. Now, our existing retail trade survey was designed to produce national estimates, and its regional estimates had very large sample errors, and indeed the region was the Canterbury region, and we couldn't quite get it down to the Christchurch economy. But we took on the challenge, and we realised there was an important need here. So what we did was we had been looking at GST data as an administrative data source. We hadn't made as much progress as we wanted to, so we took this as an opportunity to really work with GST, combine it with the survey, and I think it's probably surprised ourselves. We rather quickly came up with a retail indicator for Christchurch that had acceptable accuracy, and more importantly met the needs of those trying to think about what was happening in the Christchurch economy. And we released the latest data, I think, earlier in the week or at the end of last week, and not surprisingly, the retail sector in Christchurch in particular is beginning to plough ahead of the rest of the economy as the impact of the rebuild really begins to take place. But that important working together and getting that push from our customers to make the use of the data really made a difference to, I think, what we can achieve and what we have achieved together. And also huge lessons for us with using the GST data. So now we're thinking very hard and will be increasingly using GST data to improve our traditional wholesale and retail trade surveys over the next 12 months. Another example is the lead linked employer-employee data. So this emerged out of a discussion with Department of Labour employees, particularly Liz McPherson. I always find it good to cite the government statistician in your example. But this came from the creation of Inland Revenue's Employer Monthly Schedule, which is their database of all employer monthly tax returns, and Statistics New Zealand's business frame, or our list of businesses. But what was driving the Department of Labour, as I understand it, was a real recognition that if we needed much richer understanding of the dynamics of the labour market, and they had seen internationally that linked employer-employee data was possible. So it's that combination of that insight with our ability to give it life that produced the linked employer-employee data. That was, again, was that push from outside that makes the real difference to getting it to work. I guess the other important insight was that we had a lot of very capable, internationally qualified labour market economists who wanted to work on microdata, but without the microdata they'd have probably worked in overseas data, not New Zealand data. So it also acted to keep and create a research community around this data. And also, in the end, we've heard a lot about the integrated data. The lessons we learned from this dataset lead are the foundation of what's now our ability to integrate and combine admin data right across the public sector. So the other element of external engagement, and again, you'll hear this story again and again, trust and confidence. I was trying to get a visual for trust and confidence. It's remarkably hard to get a visual for trust and confidence. So this is stolen from a John Deere ad, apparently. But another core element of our external engagement is retaining that trust and confidence of our respondents, and we see ourselves as playing a leadership role in conjunction with other parts of the public sector with regard to maintaining that trust and confidence. As an admin data-first organisation, we're very aware there's two types of respondents: those that respond to our surveys, businesses, individuals, and those respondents whose data we use, which comes from admin data. Both types will be crucial for our business and for the official statistics system going forward. And all respondents quite rightly expect their information to be collected and used efficiently, and their information to be protected appropriately. We envisage that in the future we will increasingly need to systematically monitor public trust and respondent load, and will need to be prepared to alter what we do in response to that shifting public opinion about privacy and the related trust and confidence. And we'll also not be shy about working with other producers of admin data to make sure that what they are collecting is useful for statistical purposes, but doing that in a way that doesn't impact on their ability or their cost of collecting data. So I also want to talk about the important issue of infrastructure and capability. To make the most of admin data, some core statistical infrastructure needs to be developed and enhanced across the system. And we again see ourselves as having a leadership role. This is our core capability. And the practical realities are, without this infrastructure, it becomes much, much harder to leverage those admin data sources. The integration of multiple sources, from everything from traditional surveys from businesses and entities, combined with all sorts of different data, from cell phone data to electronic transactions data, to and that was in the speech, it wasn't an accident. will need to be worked together. And so the core statistical infrastructure we see that we need to put in place are metadata. I know often when you start a conversation about metadata, people's eyes glaze over a wee bit, but it is really, really core to making the statistical system work. Common classifications, and also conceptual frameworks, which are often not really that well understood. So at the core of our economic statistics is the National Accounts Framework, and that framework is really important because it provides us a way of ensuring consistency across our economic measures, and as we develop other economic measures, it's important we understand how they fit into those economic and social frameworks. We're well aware these are ambitious goals, even with achieving this within Statistics New Zealand, but without this infrastructure, we will not get the gains we think are out there. As well as statistical infrastructure, we'll also need to invest with our colleagues across the official statistics system, and increasingly with universities and the private sector, in some core expertise. And we see that expertise being in big data solutions, methods to combine multiple sources, and quality measures. And yeah, we don't think it's something we can develop on our own, or we can even develop in the public sector. It's going to have to be a partnership right across the country. I want to just focus on one element of quality, and to sort of give you some sense of the challenges of admin data, which is understanding quality. It is a brave new world, but quality will still have to be a byword. There will be more and more sources of admin data, and we heard that discussion this morning. Official statistics should remain, whether they use admin data or survey data, every bit as trustworthy and relevant as they are now, and decision makers expect us to be providing quality data. But the challenges of understanding and managing quality of admin data are significant. This is something Statistics New Zealand has done for many generations and thinks quite hard about, and I do think we have some real value to add here. And behind me you'll see a sort of very simplified version of our quality framework. But what I wanted to talk about was what we learned from a recent experience with the National Employment Indicator and some of the quality challenges that provided. So to keep the story relatively short, we created an experimental monthly indicator of jobs, filled jobs, based on the Inland Revenue Employer Monthly Schedule, so that database of employer tax returns, in the hope of, with the explicit ambition of meeting customer need. We knew that our existing quarterly measures, Household Labour Force Survey and the Quarterly Employment Survey, were high quality, but there was a clear demand to fill in the gaps in between. So we spent a lot of time checking the quality, making sure it was fit for purpose, and then proceeded to publish it as an experimental series. But, you know, Murphy's Law applied. As soon as we started to publish it, it started to do things we hadn't seen it do before. There was a lot of unexplained volatility, which isn't obvious. I was hoping when they did the chart there'd be obvious volatility. It is there, but you can't see it. And that we couldn't understand or explain to our customers. What we learned from this is we really need to work closely with those producing the admin data and understand the dynamics of that administrative data. In this case, I understand from the team that there were changes to the student loan system, which had a significant impact on the data that individual businesses were returning, but we didn't understand that at the time, nor could we explain it. The other key lesson for us was being really clear with our customers about the strengths and weaknesses of new data sources and how they related to existing data. To customers, we emphasised timeliness, but actually, when push came to shove, they were just as interested in all the other elements: completeness, validity, integrity, consistency, and accuracy. And in particular, they wanted to be able to see this monthly data and explain the quarterly data, and that became rather difficult. So in the end, lesson learned, we did try, and that's the important thing. We were experimenting, we did try, and we ceased publication because we couldn't put our hands on our heart and say it met a quality standard. But what we got from it was a really good understanding of the opportunities for labour market data from the employer monthly schedule, and we are now working to make much better use of that data in our labour market statistics. It may not necessarily be in the form of a monthly indicator, but will certainly inform our thinking about the Household Labour Force Survey and the QES over the next 2 years, and will hopefully see us replace some of those measures from those surveys with administrative data. So just let me conclude. As you've heard, I guess, in many forms, an exciting time ahead for administrative data, and we're at the start of a period of rapid innovation. We see ourselves having a leadership role in this environment, but that leadership role will have to be a partnership between producers and consumers, and we see ourselves, and customers, and we see ourselves at the heart of that relationship. Hopefully, I've given you some flavour of the challenge ahead and the opportunities ahead. Thank you very much.